Hi, I'm Matthew Travisano. I'm OSA's Artistic Director,
And I'm Arlyle Schultz. I'm the head counselor.
and we're here to present to you OSA 2020. This is an initiative that will hopefully reimagine the student experience at OSA for the purpose of better integrating all of the aspects of the student's life at OSA to provide supports, to make for a more enriching learning environment. And we're excited to present this to you. OSA 2020, the name itself has a couple of different meanings. Just logistics is that this would roll out in the 2020-2021 school year. And the example we use with the students, for example, if you are currently a freshman, this would roll out in your junior year, and then so on up and down from there. So, Ms. Schultz, so what will this presentation demonstrate?
It's going to demonstrate how we have some different goals moving forward in the future, how we're becoming a linked learning and pathway school, and the structures that we're going to create and the changes that we're thinking about making in order to make it possible.
So I think we'll just dive right in. So here we go. So if you go to our website, we have two sort of statements about who we are, or actually sort of who we hope to be, that are on our website. And we decided to start this presentation by putting them here, because again, this is who we hope to be, and everything that we do here at OSA as thinkers, as learners, as artists, should be in the service of these two things. So the first is our vision statement, which other organizations call a mission statement. And it reads, OSA will give the world generations of socially aware graduates, profound thinkers, innovative problem solvers, and groundbreaking artists who demonstrate the essential value of the arts and creativity in all that we do.
We also have a diversity statement that's really important to us as an organization. It reads, Oakland School for the Arts is an artistic and intellectual community founded on diversity and inclusion. OSA embraces differences in culture, race, ethnicity, gender expression and identity, sexual orientation, specific educational needs, ability, socioeconomic status, religion, nationality, immigration status, age, body type, and the many forms of life experience present in our community. All OSA stakeholders will promote these core values in practice and behavior.
So as we take you through some of the proposed changes to the student experience here at OSA, all of it should be in the service of these two statements. So we're going to start actually with the end of a student's experience at OSA, which is graduation. One of the first things that we sort of came up with as a group of students and staff and faculty members and parents, is what do we want an OSA graduate to be? What do we want them to be able to do? And we came up with this acronym that's called READY. So Ms. Schultz will take you through what does it mean, what will it mean for an OSA graduate to be ready?
Absolutely. And for us, it's so much more than just the word. Each letter means something. So R is for reflection, a student who thinks about their actions, thinks about their future, thinks about themselves, and, kind of makes adjustments accordingly, acts accordingly. Engagement is about a student who's involved in their educational experience. Advocacy is about a student who speaks up for themselves. Dedication is about a student who's motivated to work for their education. And your voice, your journey, is about incorporating a student's choice more so that education is not something that's done to them, but done for them.
And this will be reflected in our curriculum. It will be embedded into the arts and visually present throughout the building. So this sort of term ready will become part of the language of being at OSA. And with this comes training to help also the adults at OSA, the faculty and staff members, to help them become ready. Because as one of our students made sure to mention to us, and we've never forgotten it, you have to be ready yourself before you can help someone else be ready. So this, again, this will be the sort of the culmination of the student's experience at OSA. Hopefully every sort of proposed change that you're going to see in this presentation will help a student be ready and to be more ready than ever. So the first sort of thing we're going to have us think about sort of before we get to graduation is what's called an integrated program of study. In this case, integrating meaning how do we connect all the aspects of the student's experience at OSA as learners? We're becoming what's called a linked learning school, and I'll just kind of highlight here. There's this phrase you're going to be hearing about quite a bit. And linked learning is a designation that comes with certain expectations, right? And one of those expectations is that a student's experience at OSA as a learner, all parts of that experience are linked together meaningfully. In our case at OSA, it means linking a student's academics and arts, what they're learning in both, to create a whole course of study throughout a student's day, and then their year, and then of course their entire experience at OSA. So Ms. Schultz will take you through some of the things that will help us become a linked learning school and to create a truly integrated program of study.
Absolutely. One of the most important things that we want to highlight when we move to linked learning is increasing student choice. So students having more say, not only in the courses that they take, also more like variety in the courses that they get to choose from, but also accessibility, meaning students get to sit down and really design their own educational plan with guidance counselors, and also breaking down the barrier between arts and academics, meaning that we're teaching in such a way where the arts are involved in academic classes in natural ways, not just like jamming the arts somewhere random, but really making it meaningful for students. And that kind of has to do with the next bullet point, integrating arts in appropriate academic classes. For example, if there's a science class that also has material that could cross over into one of our arts areas, they could combine to make lessons more interesting for students. Also, access to community college courses. That's something that's really important to us, not only because it's free for students, which is great, but it also gets them college credit. It fulfills high school requirements, and it's a great way to kind of prepare for life after high school. And the last bullet point's a little bit boring, more exciting to counselors like me, but standardizing minutes to credits is something that makes transcripts look excellent when students are applying to outside schools. And you might have noticed that I missed a bullet point, but I was saving it for Mr. Travisano.
Yeah, so you, looking at sort of this bullet point, career technical training. So part of becoming a linked learning school, it means we're also becoming what's called a career technical education school, or CTE. And with that comes a shift in focus a bit. We've always been a college prep school, justifiably, and also, but now we're the state of California is helping us with how do we make our arts training both theoretical but also career oriented. And so we are in the arts, on the arts side of things, we're shifting our focus a bit in our curriculum to make sure that students have a window into how they can use the skills they're learning as artists in any number of careers, both in and out of the arts. And it's giving students visibility into any number of what are sort of called like soft skills, right? Those could also be sort of lifelong learning skills, anything from finance to how to promote oneself, how to have a digital presence, which is so important, how to be an entrepreneur, right? How to build a resume and that kind of thing. And so that's also meant to integrate everything a student learns, because getting ready to live a life outside of high school involves all the learning that a student does in their day. So part of becoming a linked learning school, one of the expectations of becoming what's called a linked learning school and getting that designation is that we're going to make more robust our student supports. So the goal here is to support all students, and it requires a strategic all faculty and a very proactive approach, right? And the term we've been using a lot around here lately is a rising tide lifts all boats. So when you start to support students, everyone gets support, right? And also the adults as well. It's the focus and rationale of all the proposed structural changes. And I'll say right now, and Ms. Schultz and I and all of us have had a lot of discussions around this, is there's even more we could do in terms of student supports than even we proposed right now. So be on the lookout for more proposals around student supports, more places in the schedule to build student supports, and we'll get to the sort of proposed schedule changes in a little bit. We're going to prioritize strengthening our school community and implementing new structures to make this happen. And there are two ways that we're going to sort of right away, use sort of proposed ways to build these supports. One is called advisory, and one is called flex time.
Advisory. So advisory is what we would call a home base, and it provides what you can see on the bullet point, what we call regular tier 1 level supports. All that means is it provides supports that all of us need at some point in time. Sometimes it just might be you need somebody to talk to. Sometimes it might just be that you need somebody giving you a reminder about how to keep up with your grades. Sometimes it might just be somebody introducing ways to get started with college planning. Advisory can offer all of those things. And what it aims to do is bridge the gap between home and school. So give the supports that parents often give at home, but also at school. So it strengthens the student experience and make sure that our students are ready. We're not quite finished with planning advisory, meaning that we're still looking at how many minutes is the perfect amount of minutes, how many times per week is the perfect amount. But right now we're brainstorming about 20 to 25 minutes at a time, 2 to 4 times per week. We're thinking that teachers will be leading advisories with about 10 to 15 students. We want to keep it fairly small so they have a good personal connection with students. And it will happen at the same time school-wide so that everybody has a common time to have this same space. Also, an opportunity to talk about school announcements or community things that are going on. This would have been such a great thing to have last week when OUSD was on strike and we wanted to talk about supporting our fellow students and educators. In terms of who will be meeting in the same room, we have a couple of different thoughts. It might be different depending on days of the week, mixed grade level sometimes, maybe affinity group sometimes, maybe just grade level. But at the end of the day, our main idea is that it will be structured thoughtfully. Teachers will be trained and students will have something to do so that time will be spent meaningfully.
So another support that we look forward to offering to students is what's called flex time. And in some schools, they call it a smart period or a flex period, but right now we're calling it flex time. Our students, and Ms. Schultz would definitely agree, pack a lot of things into lunchtime. And that's a perfect example of how flex time can help. So we're actually thinking flex time could be that time where students could get things done that they normally would get done at lunch. So for example, teacher office hours could happen during flex time. Monthly assemblies could happen or at least start during flex time and take some of the pressure, the time pressure and time crunch away from academic or arts classes. Student clubs can meet during flex time. And the idea is that we no longer be borrowing so much from art and academic classes or lunchtime to make these things happen. Now, of course, flex time does not mean spending an extra 20 minutes at Civic Center, or City Center, pardon me, having your Panda Express, right? Students will be expected to be at a certain place at a certain time. And we're probably going to be modeling how other schools do it, where there's always a designated check-in place. They will go to that place first, and then that teacher will know that student's going to see a particular teacher, is going to a club meeting. There's accountability for that, but students it's going to be a regular class in terms of attendance, and that attendance will be monitored. But it's a great way, again, students, people, we need downtime, we need self-care time. We ask a lot of our students at this school, at arts schools, can be really intense places, and so flex time is a way to take a little bit of the pressure off our students and also our teachers, so they also can have their lunch as well. So I'm going to keep talking, and I'm going to take on this this particular slide, and you'll notice a funny word at the top, and that's pathways. So part of becoming a linked learning school is to use the term pathway. So currently, it's funny when we bring folks to OSA for the first time, whether it's tours or guests, and we throw a lot of synonyms around, right? In terms of like what are departments? We call it emphasis, a department. We were the school of dance, the school of visual art. And with linked learning comes the term pathway. And I love the term pathway because a student in a pathway program is on a path. They know sort of where they're going, right? But they can also step off the path to do some things, right? So we are going to be using the term pathways, and we're going to be organizing our students artistically into 2 larger pathways. One is design, visual, and media arts, and the other is performing arts. So for example, within the pathway, design, visual, and media arts, there'll be sub-pathways, and those sub-pathways would be audio production and engineering, digital media, fashion design, literary arts, production design, radio broadcast, and visual art. On the performing arts side, that pathway would be made up of sub-pathways, dance, instrumental music, theater, and vocal music. And these are the programs we currently have on offer. Not all of them are departments. Audio production, for example, and radio broadcast exist under existing departments, but they would be pathways, sub-pathways in this new way of thinking about the arts. I'm going to sort of preview the next slide and have Ms. Schultz talk about one of the great things that can come out of thinking about these pathways is the grouping of students for their academic learning. So you want to talk about how that could work?
Yeah, absolutely. So Like Mr. Travisano said, the nice thing about pathways is it naturally puts students in cohorts that we can kind of use to our advantage when it comes to academic classes. What we can do is we can see, let's say, students in the performing arts pathway and find a class where, you know, the performing arts kind of fits with the academics, let's say world history, and the teacher can kind of tailor the lesson to those performing artists. So that's one way a pathway can really work to our advantage, keep our students engaged. Another thing that pathways can do is it can give us the opportunity to offer electives to students that don't necessarily have to do with their art per se, or I don't want to put it that way, more like it might not be in their specific sub-pathway, but still might relate to them as artists. So one example of that might be Photoshop. Or AP Music Theory or entrepreneurship. So even though that might not be something that's specifically in their pathway, it's something that might help them out later on. So it's an elective that they could take. And speaking of that elective, it wouldn't have to just be offered during arts time. It could also be offered during the academic periods, which is something that we haven't been able to traditionally do.
And the exciting thing is, and the feedback we've gotten a lot over the years here at OSA. I've been here 8 years. Michelle's been here even longer. We always get questions, why can't I take courses in other arts departments? And we've never honestly really had a defensible reason why that's the case. And our arts departments are rather siloed from each other. And so one of the ways that even just using a term pathway just to think differently about our school is that a pathway is a much less rigid definition of what we do. And a student under this way of thinking, under the pathway system, would be able to take a course. So for example, I happen to share the theater program in addition to being the artistic director for the whole school. Why can't one of my students who's in my acting strand also take a class in Photoshop or entrepreneurship, right? Mm-hmm. We also, for example, within theater, we have musical theater students who could absolutely qualify for an AP music theory course. But right now they can't take it because the schedules don't line up. And so part of this is also responding to feedback that we've gotten a lot over the years about why can't students in one art form take courses in another. So part of the pathway structure is meant to facilitate this. And also, as Ms. Schultz said, they can also be offered in academic time as well. That way, for example, a student, let's say in visual art, can take all the visual art courses they can and also take a course in singing or in Photoshop, in music, and the off the table course that sits in vocal music is a great example. Two of the leaders of that are visual artists, right? Who happen to produce music and who happen to be making podcasts. So this is actually we're actually responding to feedback that we've gotten over the years as we've thought about this pathway concept, and it also comes with being a linked learning school.
Yes. So we've talked about a lot of great ideas so far, things that we've been working on really hard with families, with students, with faculty members, but we have to think about how to actually make it happen. And those have been some pretty long conversations over time. And we've come up with a couple of prototype bell schedules, prototype being the key word here. So nothing is set in stone. But basically we have to think about how can we fit things like advisories, flex times, space for electives, space and time for concurrent enrollment courses into our day and make it work for us. So again, we've come up with 2 prototype bell schedules to kind of propose to you here. But just to reiterate, nothing is set in stone. The reason that we're putting them forth is to get feedback from you.
And since we're at art school, the term we're going to use is it's wet clay. Yeah. So the sculpture is still moist. The sculpture can still be moved, and things change. And you'll notice too, if our goal as a school is to provide student support, even these 2 proposed schedules, there still needs to be more time for student support. So based on the feedback that we get from you, from students, from all the stakeholders at OSA, we're definitely going to go back to committee and re-wrestle with this bell schedule. But it does start to maybe address some of the things that we hope to do through OSA 2020 and to better live up to those statements we read to you at the beginning of the presentation. So the first schedule we're going to show you is what's called a 2-day block. And the word block here refers to a block of time, a longer block of time than we currently have. Now, a lot of the arts programs at OSA actually already exist in blocks. They already have classes that meet for longer than 15 minutes. And so actually a lot of students already have a frame of reference for block schedules. But just to orient you to how this is set up, on the top here is middle school, and you'll see MS here, and these are all the times. And then down here is high school, and then again here are all the times. These numbers here, where my cursor is, don't refer to periods. It's just the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth academic class they would take in a day. So these are not periods. This is not academic fifth period. It just happens to be that student's fifth academic class in the day. Ms. Schultz, the biggest maybe sort of change right away is shifting our early release day. So you want to talk about where is our early release day on this schedule?
Yes, you might notice that it moved a couple of days down to Wednesday. The biggest reason behind that is because OUSD's early release is on Wednesday, and feedback from our families has been pretty strong in asking us to make that move. Now, again, nothing is set in stone. Things are open to feedback and discussion, but that's been one big ask from our families over time, is that we match OUSD, to be mindful that families might have students in a few different schools within Oakland. So that's just something we're mindful of. Also, something I want to mention about Wednesday is that PD stands for professional development. That's for our teachers and our staff. It's not production design. So that's our early release day. Students go home, teachers stay here, and they work on developing curriculum and collaborating for arts and academic integration, working on advisories, all that kind of stuff.
And that's what we do already on Mondays. That's that sort of more teacher staff facing part of the week is now on Wednesdays in this proposed schedule. So 2-day block. So in this schedule, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, students would have all their academic classes. They would also see the arts. But you're noticing too this new class advisory that we mentioned in the previous slide. All right. So this is kind of like our schedule now, in the sense that students would see all their classes on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. The shift starts to happen on Wednesday. And on Wednesdays, students would only have 2 of their academic classes and their arts. On Thursday, students would only have 3 of their academic classes and their arts. And that's the day we've also built in flex time, that time when students can go see teachers, have club meetings, etc. All right. I want to point out to you in the high school section, this sort of darker burnt orange cell. The reason why this is called academic/arts is this is a space for a potential arts-based elective or an academic elective. It doesn't have to be in this slot. This class could meet any of the periods in the morning, right, or any of the periods before arts time. So for example, let's say that, but just for right now, we keep that class where it is. A student could actually have a lot of arts time in a day should they choose to take an arts-based elective. But that's also a time they could take gender studies, AP psychology, physics, but they could also take arts-based electives in or out of their subpathway, right? That's when your actor could take Photoshop. That's when your writer could take a voice class and that kind of thing. So again, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, very much similar, although we're going to talk about in a bit, there is a shift in time to how time is allocated to arts and academics. And then Wednesday, Thursday would be your block days, your longer academic periods, with Wednesdays being the early release day. And Ms. Schultz is going to talk to you a little bit about what's called a 4-day block.
Yes. So the 4-day block is very similar to the 2-day block when it comes to Mondays. So Mondays, students still have all of their classes. And that's just kind of the same model that we follow now. So Monday, and again, the middle school is on the top, the high school is on the bottom. So Mondays are very similar to what we do now, but you'll notice that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays look a little bit different. And that's because students are in block classes, so fewer classes, 2 to 3 per day, but for longer periods of time. And basically the 4-day block has similar is similar, I should say, to the 2-day block in that it has advisories. So you can see them here for the middle school, has them down here for the high school, has flex periods, and also has that academic arts elective, and also still has the early release on Wednesday, but we just have more days of block periods. And block periods can allow for project-based learning, arts and academic integration, community college classes on campus. So that's kind of the idea with having longer periods of time to spend with students.
And Michelle, do you want to talk about also why is it that community colleges actually require a block schedule if they want to locate courses on our campus?
Yes. So we work with the Peralta system. So that's Berkeley City College, Laney, Merritt, and Alameda College. And it is their request that we use block periods because it models what they do when they have classes on their campuses. So that's been a specific request through them. If we bring a course like American Sign Language onto our campus, we had statistics on our campus this year. They prefer, or actually not prefer, require a block period.
And that came up because we tried to do statistics in our current schedule, and the Peralta colleges did not like working within our current schedule.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, it was pretty tough, and we had to do a lot of kind of moving stuff around, and it just didn't naturally fit, whereas it would fit better in a block schedule.
Also on this schedule, the Wednesday is still still the early release day. Mm-hmm. So again, in this schedule, students would leave campus, and then teachers and staff would remain behind for that PD, professional development. One reality I do need to acknowledge, and certainly as the artistic director, is we have to find time from places to make our advisories, our flex time, because again, the whole goal of this is student supports. In both schedules, there is a decline in the arts time, where we have found time to create advisories and flex time, and that is not something we've done lightly. And it's been a lot of tough discussions around where we're going to find this time. Depending on which schedule, if we go with either schedule, right? But if we go, depending on which kind of schedule we end up going with, arts would meet for different amounts of time. So for example, in this schedule, the loss to arts time is less than in the 2-day block, yes. Right? But we did have to find the time from somewhere. However, one thing to think about as well for the arts is that if a student chose to take an arts-based elective, they would actually have more time as an artist than they currently have now, because they'd actually get another arts class on top of their normal course sequence within their sub-pathway.
Yes. And one other thing to mention just about time, Mr. Travisano said, when we add something in, we have to get the time from somewhere else or add it on. And I just want to note that on the middle school schedule in the 2-day block, that the day for middle schoolers is longer. So it goes till 3:45. So again, that's something that's a bit of a compromise that we want our community to think about. Is that a compromise that we find to be worth it? Is it not? But something just to be mindful of. And speaking of the times, we have an infographic here to kind of go over it in more detail.
So what we've done here is we've sort of set out the 3 different schedules that we've been working with sort of in our committees, in sort of the OSA 2020 committees. This is our current schedule right now. So we have middle on the top, high school on the bottom. So for example, in both middle and high, currently academic classes meet for 1175 minutes in a week. Mm-hmm. And then the arts classes meet for different times because, of course, middle school students have less arts time. So 495 minutes per week for middle school, 715. That includes 0 time set aside specifically for student supports, either academic or socio-emotional supports. And that's just not going to work, right? Part of being a linked learning school is that we must build in student supports. It's also just a moral issue for us, right? Now, for a 2-day block, which is this one in the middle, again, in the middle of the page, but middle school's up here, high school's down here. In a 2-day block scenario, academic classes for middle school remain the same. It's very difficult. We can't really cut back academic time, right? Art time meets for only 10 minutes less. And then support time is actually increased. So we actually borrow time from the arts, and also with a reduction in passing periods, because less classes, less passing periods, to make up time for support. And that would be our advisory and flex time. Now, on the high school side of things, for both the 2-day and 4-day block, you'll see a range of time. And that's because if a student chooses to take an arts-based elective, that puts them on the upper end in terms of how many arts minutes they get in the week. If they choose not to, that puts them on the lower end. Also, the same thing for why the academic has a spread here. If they chose to take an arts-based elective, they'd actually be spending less time in a purely academic class, and then vice versa, of course, with the support time being at 120 minutes per week. Under a 4-day block, it shifts a bit more, and actually we do gain more support time for students in a 4-day block than we do in a 2-day block. And then arts and academic minutes shift a little bit accordingly. Again, as we mentioned before, though, we are even still looking for more ways to build in support structures into our day for students. So to use our sort of artsy wet clay analogy, the clay is still wet because we're even still wrestling with where to build in even more supports. But your feedback is important to us, as is the feedback of our students and other stakeholders in terms of what you think so far about these proposed schedules, knowing that we're going to take that information, that feedback, back to the table and most likely propose other schedules as well.
And speaking of your feedback, a survey is going to be given later this week for everybody to share their thoughts. And we're hoping that this presentation will be helpful in you kind of formulating that feedback and helping give us some ideas on how we can further develop this plan for OSA 2020. Our students were also given this presentation in person by different faculty members, both on Monday and yesterday in their arts classes. So now we're hoping that our student community, our parent community, will be able to give us some information about what they think so we can take it back and do some more work on it.
So it's important to think about the results. We started this presentation with graduation, right? The end results of the student's experience here at OSA. So just to review the intended results, what we hope that can come out of the new OSA and OSA 2020. Structures that provide support for all students to be ready. A system where students are in control of their education rather than having school done to them. And then lastly, a positive school culture where students are proud to be at OSA and support the success of one another. And that word support keeps coming up over and over again. Again, all the changes we make have to be in support of students and their families. And that sometimes means some hard decisions have to get made in order to best support them. But we're always coming from a place of providing support, especially where we have not previously provided support to our students and to our families. So we really appreciate you listening to this presentation. You're welcome outside of even the feedback opportunities that Ms. Schultz described. Any one of us in the administration is happy to help and answer any questions you may have, and also the students. We are very much in contact with your students, and they're giving us lots of their feedback already, but we really appreciate you partnering with us, and we really appreciate you being part of the OSA community. So again, I'm Matthew Travisano. I'm OSA's Artistic Director.
And I'm Arlyle Schultz, the Head Counselor.
And we thank you for listening.